Welcome to Everything Fear. Today, I'm going to be giving you my personal top 10 zombie movies of all time. Hello, and welcome to Everything Fear, your one-stop shop for all things horror. I'm Kit Tinsley, I'm a horror author, film academic, and general horror geek. If you enjoy this video, if you could please subscribe, give us a like, and maybe tickle that bell icon to be notified when we upload future content, then that would be great, thank you. As I say, today I'm going to be giving you my personal top 10 zombie movies of all time. This is a completely personal list, so feel free to let me know in the comments below what your favourites are. Number 10. Plague of the Zombies. Hammer's 1966 zombie movie is one of their lesser known and most underrated movies. Directed by John Gilling at the same time as he was making The Reptile with many of the same sets and cast as was Hammer's Way. The film stars Andre Morel, who had played Quatermass in the TV version of Quatermass and the Pit. The movie deals with voodoo, grave robbing and the undead. Probably the last important zombie movie before George A. Romero changed the meaning of zombie movies forever with Night of the Living Dead. Plague of the Zombies is an entertaining movie with some really creepy moments and a great atmosphere. Number 9. White Zombie. This movie was released in 1932 and starred Bela Lugosi, who just a year previously had stolen the screen in Universal's adaptation of Dracula. White Zombie gives him another great role to sink his teeth into. Sorry for that pun, it was terrible. He plays Legendre, an evil voodoo master who uses zombies as slaves in his mill. The main story focuses on a young couple who befriend a plantation owner who secretly wants to steal the woman for himself. To aid him in his quest, he turns to Legendre for help. The voodoo master uses a potion that makes the woman seem dead, but soon she returns from the grave as a mindless slave. The movie has a great atmosphere, and Lugosi is really impressive in his role. The mesmeric stare that he used so well in Dracula really comes into play here. Number 8. Zombie Flesh Eaters. In 1979, Italian horror master Lucio Fulci released Zombie Flesh Eaters, a gloriously gory zombie movie. And although zombies play a part in many of Fulci's films, this is probably his truest zombie movie, where the zombie takes centre stage. The film has a fairly simple plot, with a young woman travelling to the Antilles in search of her missing father, where she comes face to face with a horde of flesh-eating zombies. The film features Fulci's trademark gore and nihilism, as well as his obsession with doing harm to the human eye. Though lacking the more surreal and esoteric flair of his 80s work like The Beyond and City of the Living Dead, Zombie Flesh Eaters remains one of the greats of the video nasty era. Number 7. Day of the Dead. The third part of George A. Romero's zombie series was released in 1985. It followed 1968's Night of the Living Dead, which pretty much invented the modern zombie horror movie, and 1978's Dawn of the Dead, which, if I'm completely honest, pretty much perfected the modern zombie horror movie. Day of the Dead, however, is probably the bleakest and most complex movie in the series. Night of the Living Dead is about the beginning of a zombie apocalypse. Dawn of the Dead is humanity losing the battle. Day of the Dead, humanity has lost. Survivors are hiding underground in bunkers. Day of the Dead starts with humans beaten. A ragtag bunch of survivors live underground, made up of scientists and the military. The two groups argue over how to continue. With completely unlikable human characters and the sympathetic zombie test subject Bub, this movie really is saying that humans are the monsters and we will be our own downfall. Number 6. Dawn of the Dead 2004. It's very rare that I would put a remake into one of these lists, especially when I will be putting the original further up in this list. However, Zack Snyder's 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead is a perfect example of how to do a remake. It takes the central idea of the original, a group of human survivors hiding out in an abandoned shopping mall, but completely makes this idea its own. With a great cast including Ving Rhames, Matt Frewer and Ty Burrell. That's right, Phil Dunphy from Modern Family is in this movie. The movie has really good special effects and a very strong story, though it doesn't have the strong satirical statement that ran through the original. But as an entertaining zombie movie, this one was great. 5. Cargo. The most recent movie on this list comes from 2017. This Netflix original has to be one of the most emotional and heartbreaking zombie movies ever made. Set in the Australian outback in the midst of a zombie outbreak, a young couple tries to survive and keep their baby safe. When the mother turns into a zombie and the father is bitten, he realises that he only has a short amount of time to find a suitable protector for his baby when he turns. This quest takes up most of the film, as it deals with the selfishness and selflessness that humanity is capable of. An emotional rollercoaster of a movie that you do not expect to see within the zombie subgenre. Number 4, Return of the Living Dead. Written and directed by Dan O'Bannon, the man behind Alien and so many other classic horror movies. And based on a novel by John A. Russo, the man who co-wrote the original Night of the Living Dead with George A. Romero. Romero and Russo's deal meant that Russo retained the Living Dead part of the title and was free to use that, while Romero went off to make his sequels. Return of the Living Dead, the novel, is Russo's attempt at his own sequel to the original Night of the Living Dead. O'Bannon rewrote the original script and made it much more comedic. This film stands out as being the origin of the idea that zombies live on human brains rather than just human flesh, and that they can talk and say things like brains. With its wild characters, punk soundtrack, and outstanding zombie effects, Return of the Living Dead remains a cult classic to this day. 3. Night of the Living Dead. Prior to this movie in 1968, zombies had always been supernatural in nature, usually the result of a curse or voodoo magic. George A. Romero took things in a more scientific direction. The suggestion here is that radiation from a passing comet is causing the dead to reanimate, although the fact that if you're bitten by one you turn into one suggests that it is more viral in nature. Shot on a very low budget, the film broke many boundaries in terms of screen violence, where you actually saw a child kill and devour her own mother. And also, in terms of race, the film broke boundaries by having a African-American lead actor. The film is a great horror movie, but also a great satire of the politics in America at the time it was made. This is the movie that basically created the modern zombie movie. Number 2. 28 Days Later. Released in 2002, written by Alex Garland and directed by Danny Boyle, 28 Days Later is the next evolution in the zombie movie. Though some would argue that those infected in this movie are not technically zombies because they're not dead, they've just been infected with a rage-causing virus. But they certainly look and act like zombies to me. The film changed the game for zombie movies as well. Prior to this, zombies had always been slow-moving, shuffling creatures. Whereas the zombies, or infected in 28 Days Later, they run, and they run fast. And this trend has carried on in many zombie movies since. Personally, I'm a purist. I prefer my zombies to be slow and shuffling. But in the context of 28 Days Later, the running zombies really do work and add to the tension. With a small budget, a great cast and an amazing soundtrack, 28 Days Later ushered the zombie movie into the 21st century. Some honourable mentions before we get to the number 1 spot. The Walking Dead. Though personally I feel that this show has lost its way in recent years, there is no denying the impact that The Walking Dead has had. When this series began way back in 2010, the popularity of zombie movies was waning slightly and being kept more in the low budget area of the movie market. The best stories involving zombies at the time were being told in novels and in comics, and it's from one of these comics that this TV series arose. The Walking Dead gave the characters time to develop and to really explore the human consequences of a zombie apocalypse. Shaun of the Dead. Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's zombie comedy movie very nearly ended up on this list, as I think it's a brilliant film. And after all, it is a loving homage to Romero's zombie movies. And though the film features some gore and a couple of good jump scares, on the whole, its tone is far more comedic, and it is more of a comedy horror film than a horror comedy, if that makes sense. So I decided not to put it on the list. But if I could have done, it would have been, and it would have been near the top. So, the number one spot, my favourite zombie movie of all time. Dawn of the Dead, 1978. It had been 10 years since George A. Romero had basically invented the modern zombie movie. And Italian horror legend Dario Argento approached Romero with the idea of making a sequel. Argento produced the film, and Romero returned to the world he had created a decade before. Whereas the first movie focused on the beginning of the apocalypse, in Dawn of the Dead the apocalypse is in full swing and humanity are losing the battle. A group of survivors take shelter in an abandoned shopping mall and spend their days lazily going around acting as though very little has changed, as they take comfort in all of the wonderful products and clothes and food they can get in the shopping mall. Eventually, of course, they are overrun and must fight for their survival, with amazing gory special effects from Tom Savini, and a sly poke at the consumerism so prevalent in society at the time. Romero made that rare kind of sequel that not only lived up to the original movie, but in so many ways bettered it. If Night of the Living Dead made Romero the king of zombie movies, then Dawn of the Dead was definitely his coronation. Thank you very much. As I said, this was a purely personal list. If there's something I've missed that you'd like to see in the list, let me know down below. I'm always looking for new great zombie movies to check out, so please leave me a comment. And until next time, stay scared and stay tuned.